Ready? Turning the recorder on. Recorder is on. It's 4:07 p.m. This is April 15th, 2025. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. Roll call.
Linda Sosa, Jennifer Davila, Luanne Hook,
Britt Hornsby.
Ann Leppanen.
Erin Nelson serving as town manager.
So the first item is approval of the Bluff Town Council regular meeting minutes from April 1st, 2025. Linda, thanks for doing those. Has everybody read them? Are there any changes, modifications, comments?
Motion to approve Bluff Town Council regular meeting minutes from April 1st, 2025.
Second.
If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Next is the approval of the Bluff Town Council work session minutes from April 8th, 2025. Again, same question. Has everybody read them? Are there any changes, any additions or modifications?
Motion to approve Bluff Town Council work session minutes from April 8th, 2025.
Second.
If there's no discussion, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. And then lastly is approval of Bluff Town Council special meeting minutes from April 8th, 2025. Any comments, modifications?
Motion to approve Bluff Town Council special meeting minutes from April 8th, 2025.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Next is public comment. There will be a 3-minute time limit for each person who wishes to make a public comment. If you exceed the 3-minute time limit, the meeting controller will mute you. And put your name in the chat box or raise the hand icon, or if you're in the audience, raise your hand if you wish to make a public comment. Leah Collins is the only person in the audience.
The message has been up for a while. I don't have anyone online who has indicated they would like to make a public comment at this time.
Then we'll close off public comment at 4:10 p.m. And then move to first thing on the agenda, which is a summary of Bluff Waterworks meeting on April 9th, 2025. And Linda, myself, and Jen were all there. I don't recall anything out of the ordinary. The same, agenda pretty much followed. There's no disastrous chemical in our water lines. Everything's working well. System's working. So, and there wasn't any further discussion on the strategic planning or anything else that went on.
Now, the only thing that Mark said that I think he said we have all of the equipment to finish up the meter replacement stuff finally. And I think he said that.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was all or if it was just the next part, but I think he said all.
No, I thought that's what he said too. He had all of it.
So there's been a group in town looking at, I think they're looking at lead in the meters and out at the meters. Was that discussed? Like, did they ask them to come? It was apparently EPA.
Okay, so the people looking at the water lines are looking at the 22 or 20 something water lines that were not included in the Sunrise survey that BWW contracted with as fulfilling those lead pipes and whatever. So there were like 20 some households or areas that couldn't be done by Sunrise in the traditional way, or the way that they've done everybody else. So then they had to come in and do that machine. And thanks for reminding us about that, Lou, because when we go to the next Bluff Waterworks meeting, or something to Marks Powell. It would be helpful when something like that is happening for us to be able to either BWW or the town throw out something like this work is being done, because I had 6 texts within 10 minutes of them hitting our street. Like, what are they doing? Why are they working on? What are they digging? Who's putting something in? And I was going to ask Marks, could we just get a heads up when you're doing public work and save them the hassle of responding?
And the website, if that was up on, if they have their website going and it's up, then you could just turn people to look at that.
That's a good idea.
And just another comment that I'll probably go to the next meeting and see what they think, but I've raised concern about the water hydrants, the fire hydrants along the highway that are in danger. And so last week I saw somebody hit one like 6 feet from me. It didn't break it. It didn't damage it. The car was okay, but they still need to be protected. And so I had it in my cart to see if that would work, like 2 days before this person hit it. So anyway, but they make some things that can wrap around the hydrant, and then they stick up in their, their signal to drivers that at night they're reflective and they have some materials. So, there's some other spots we've talked about reflective stuff for the ditches, the storm drain ditches, which isn't really water department, but more road department to keep people from falling.
I also think the hydrants might be more fire department than water department based. I know they work together on metering water out of those, but
Yeah, it's kind
I'm not
of
sure.
been some discussions of that over the years.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it is still a concern of mine, especially after I saw that car hit and I was yelling at him as loud as I could to stop, and it just carried right in and hit that hydrant. So all we need is break that one off, anyone off along the road there, and the whole tank will drain and have a town.
So the next meeting, Jen, is the second Wednesday of May,
I believe it's like the
14th.
14th, yep.
So May 14th.
But there are some things available. Just the fire department can still get to the hydrants, but yet you can signal drivers because they don't mean to hit them.
Right.
But something to protect them or something to put around them or something.
All right, then moving to the report on the roads committee work with Joan Rudinell. I did not have a chance to look at what Michael sent out.
And it looks like Michael is on today.
Oh, good. Michael Havocan, if you're on, could you kind of update us with what you sent out? And apologize, I'm about a day behind on everything.
Okay, we got 2 items from Jones and DeMille. One item is the bid documents for Calf Canyon Road. Excuse me. The bid documents for Calf Canyon Road, and the other item was the Bluff paving plan from Jones and DeMille. The bid documents is something that I'm hoping that we can move forward on very quickly, so we can get that project out to bid and get it completed hopefully by the end of the fiscal year. In those documents, one item I particularly liked a lot was the contract. I think it protects the owner, and that's, to me, the most important thing. The other item is the Bluff paving plan, and they came back after a couple of conversations we've had with a 1,041,000 for that for the old highway repaving. They show a memo with a cross section and just an overview of the road. And I'm under the impression that that is enough. What they have now is enough to go forward funding sources. They mentioned two sources, the UDOT program and the CIB. So that's where we're at right now.
On that map, does it pull out at Third East or, sorry, it's hard to see it.
Let me share it so he can see what you're seeing too. Looking at this map. Trying to look at this. Okay, here we go. So this looks like this is fourth.
Yep.
Okay, that's right.
So what you're looking at now is the old highway.
Yep.
You know, which was the original road, main thoroughfare through town, first identified in 1901. So that's it. It's a little less than a mile.
So they haven't gotten to the point of, well, I guess they have. We were just looking at strategic planning and whatnot, and did they stay with their major plan of taking the walkable part out of the historic section?
Walkable part, you mean pathway, a pedestrian pathway?
Right, or like, you know, we talked about making traffic calming structures, something to where they mentioned at the very front that the town wants a smooth travel for cars as well as a safe walking, but this just has a line drawn through, you know, the town.
Yeah, so this would be a 24-foot.
The overall is 30 feet. And
30-foot plus the little shoulder on the side, but no walking path.
no, the walking path at 229,000 was removed, you know, based on our previous discussion.
And that's where we were just discussing in the work session. We're trying to follow, we did a strategic plan, spent $40,000 to do a strategic plan, and it was in the, what was it, the building, the growth and the livability sections, both of those, it was a priority of the group that did strategic planning for the entire town to make sure that it's walkable and safe for pedestrians and for bicycles. So to take that out is really contradicting the strategic plan. So, and the general plan discusses it too, but it's several spots here that
I don't see it contradicting because and maybe my understanding is off, but my understanding is you could phase it and put in the walkable part when we have more money.
you build it, if you're doing a big engineering plan, this is a conceptual plan. So you put in what you want. And then if you only can build.
No. Look at the funding sources. The funding sources is for a highway, for a roadway, a paved roadway. A pedestrian path and a bicycle path is a separate pathway. It's on a separate track. So, I mean, we had this discussion. I don't know why we're discussing anything.
Well, because it's shown up again without it on it. And the strategic plan and a general plan from the townspeople would like it to be walkable and be able to safely ride bicycles through. And so this big plan, we're not ready to spend money on it. But when we put it out, that needs to be part of what they're designing in order to meet our general plan and our strategic plan.
Well,
and not.
You can meet those plans. You just have to find a separate funding source for those. That's what, has been explained. You can't go to to UDOT and say, I want this and I want a pedestrian bicycle path also. This has been explained to us by the engineers.
So what the idea would be when you do a conceptual plan is you would put in, okay, the road will be on this part of the highway. We'll tear up the paving that's there and we'll put it on one side of the road or the other so that we have space for that later, or we wind through and
You have space for it. It's a 99-foot right of way. There's plenty of space. The roadway is only taking a third of that. So there's plenty of room for a pedestrian path. So, and the one that was shown originally was a separate pathway. So separate funding, separate path.
And when will they show us like the traffic calming aspects of their plan is?
When we go into design. Right now, this is what we're going for funding sources with this document that you see before you.
So moving off of that piece back to the bid package. I did not put this on for a vote because I was thinking that if we didn't have this, I had this on here as a placeholder because at the time we did the agenda, still didn't have the information. And so
Right.
I didn't think to put it on for a vote. Michael, if I put this on for a vote at our first meeting, which would be the 6th, is that something that kind of fits in the schedule?
The 6th of, you're talking the 6th of May?
Yes.
It's good. I don't know if we'll make it. In terms of the deadline, so to speak.
Could we not put it on for next week's meeting?
We don't have one next week. This is our third one. No, that's okay.
Work session.
Michael, let me just talk with everybody. I think what we could do is just do a quick 5-minute virtual toward the end of this week or the first part of next week. So let me just look at the schedules and talk to everyone.
Yeah, I just like to say, I read through, in detail, the document originally and, just made some comments, which some of them they picked up on, some of them they didn't. They're the engineers, so I have to go with what they think is the way to go. And so, what you're looking at is a finished document. I just want to say that.
And one thing just to note, just for everybody's just information, like the mobilization cost is $95,000. So when you bring equipment to town and get all set up, pay that's a chunk of your project.
So which one are you talking about?
The old highway
Okay. So
is the projected out of that 1,041,000.
So looking at the need, so Erin, I'm going to throw this to you. In order to have Jones and DeMille put out the bid packet, do we vote on the bid packet after they put it out and it comes back with the bids?
Well, so I was curious about that. That would be how I think we need to do it, is that it goes out to bid, they collect it and they can open it for us and they can provide recommendations, but then the council must approve who you are hiring to actually do the work and assign the contract. So there would be a bid at the end of that for the bidders.
So we could just go ahead and have Jones and DeMille follow up with putting it out and then see what we get back.
Yeah, so if you, when you get a chance to look at the contract, you'll see that all the bids will go to Jones and DeMille and they will be opened by Jones and DeMille and a representative of the town of Bluff.
Well, what I'm trying to decide is whether we have to actually vote on the bid packet, and I don't think we do. I think we can just say, we've got the bid packet, and Jones and DeMille can put it out, and then we vote on whether we're accepting any of those bids.
But Michael, could you clarify, the bid packet is for It was my understanding that this is just a concept project, the old highway. And we need this in our pocket, so we have it, so if we get funding, they can go to funding. That's not ready to go to bid.
We're talking
No.
about. Canyon.
We're talking about two different things,
Okay.
two
Okay,
different
that's what I
projects.
wanted to clarify, because it sounded like you were big packaging the big project.
No, this is just for the Cap Canyon, and that's right. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. So this is just to be able to have Jones and DeMille send it out. So I don't think in fact, I'm going to say we don't need to vote on this. So Michael, go ahead and tell Jones and DeMille to get it out, and then we'll see what we get back.
Okay, good, thank you. Now, going back to the old highway, is the town council, agreeable that this is the document that will put forth the funding sources?
Michael, in looking at what Lou was saying with the cost of mobilization for this type of thing, would it be feasible to add 5 feet or so to the 30 feet to put in a bike path? No, it doesn't have to be a separate path, just I'm gonna let bike paths run along with the regular road there. And that way somewhere in the future, we could create a separate walking path. But I know that a lot of municipalities have just a bike lane that runs in congruency with their regular road.
Well, that was I think that was option 4 in the original submittal. The problem with that is the drainage, as I recall. Right now over there on Black Locust, because of the bypass, Highway 191, which created the dam, the drainage is poor from what, I've been told and what I've observed. So it just gets dicey. And the thinking was that, currently people ride their bikes and they walk on the highway and the old highway. And so that wouldn't change. And there isn't that much traffic. The thinking was that, it could be shared by pedestrians and vehicles. I mean, there's going to be speed bumps. There's going to be traffic control signs. So I don't see it, I don't see it as necessary at this point. When they showed the separate pathway, which was, I think option 2 and 3 is, from memory. That was a separate pathway, asphalt, a certain kind of asphalt. And that is going to have drainage issues when we come to that. So I don't know. I mean, I'd like to go with the way it is.
So, Michael, what is it that you're asking of the council at this point on that project on the old highway?
What I'm asking is that, what we're looking at now is this, I mean, I'd like to go forward, and discuss funding sources at this point for this project.
Okay, so funding sources will have to go on a work session because there's more to the CIB than just saying, this is what we need. There's a process for the CIB that we have to follow. And so I'm going to put that, the work session for May, the next work session, which would be the 13th. And then we can look at what funding sources there are and what would need to happen. I'm not at all confident that we get anything from the CIB, and it's a lot of work. So I want to be sure everybody understands how the CIB functions before we take a little trip down the CIB road and spend a lot of time. So Michael, maybe when you and I get together this week, we could talk about that, the state funding and what all we need to put together to look at state funding as well for that work session.
Mhm. Okay, the other, place that I was gonna, submit this was, San Juan County Transportation Board.
For the, for which piece?
For the old highway improvement Bluff paving plan.
Well, I think, given the amount of money that we're looking at, I think we need to have a discussion about what all those funding sources look like. So it could be including the San Juan Transportation Board.
Okay, from what, I was told at a previous meeting of the Transportation Board, is they would take it to CIB, and if they got approval, it would be 50% grant, and then the Transportation Board would take on the loan. The other 50%.
And we have to, that was part of what we were discussing in the work session too, that's our priorities on the CIB. And that one did pop up because of the, everybody wants to have a walkable area and a nice spot through the town. So it was debated whether that goes high priority on CIB or if we focus the CIB on the old school or all those different things that we discussed.
So you're talking about the capital improvement project versus the
CIB and
CIB.
capital, yeah.
So let's just move this discussion to a work session because it's bigger than what we have time for today. I don't think we'll get through 17 items if we stay stuck on item 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Erin, was there any update on the match? You're still working on that?
Yes, I think I've got all the invoices. So I will send this over to Michael so he can get a second set of eyes on it. But since our last request, I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of roads spending this year, but it looks like the total invoices added up to $25,925.07. And so if we got the 50% match back on that, we'd be asking the San Juan Transportation Board for $12,962.54 back. As I said, I just did that before the meeting. So Michael, I will email that over to you. But I do think that that's kind of in line with the estimates that we had talked about when Michael and I talked a few days ago. So.
And then I have one more question on the expense we also discussed on this one for that you want to put out bids for Calf Canyon to repair that little stretch of it. Is that coming out of roads department money hopefully matched with the transportation, or where are you figuring that money will come from?
Yes, it's coming out of the C Roads Fund. We have a budget estimate from the engineer between 35,000 and 50,000. So currently, we're planning to cover that expense with C Roads funds and get 50% back from the Transportation Board, which is another reason why we hope to get this done by June 30th.
And then this one includes 7th Street.
Yes.
The 35 to 50 was combined. It was the paving project and the riprap project.
Yeah, the curves on 7th West.
And that's all wrapped up in that bid proposal. Both items it looked like.
I'm sorry, say it again.
It looked like they were both in the bid proposal.
Yes, it's in the bid package. If you look to the end, look at the drawings at the end, you'll see that there.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the problems with these two combined is that you have mobilization for paving and you have mobilization for hauling and riprapping. So you just have two little tiny projects. It would be nice if we could combine them both.
So,
Yeah, but I understand what you're asking, yeah, so that's the Calf Canyon erosion correction and 7th Street West groundwater control curbs.
so moving to number 3. So that's a review of Bluff's planning and zoning amended bylaws. Amanda Podmore, after we passed the amended bylaws, she had a question on one of the changes. And of course, I've left that sitting on my home desk. So what I would like to do, since I don't have an answer from our attorney on number 4, discussion and vote on amended rules and policies for the Bluff Town Council, I would just like to move these two to our first meeting in May so that I can be specific what the question was from planning and zoning, and then also to be able to answer the question on the anchor site. And Chris McNanny's preparing for a jury trial, so he's really on emergencies only right now. So I'm just going to make a note to move both of these to May 6th. Number 5, status of the Bluff Cemetery and grant possibilities. So Friday, I went up to Monticello and met with Matt McDonald, Brad Bunker, who did the survey of the cemetery for the county, Laura, Commissioner Mon, Commissioner Harvey was virtual, and Commissioner Stubbs was in person, and then myself. And the discussion was, what does Bluff want to do with the cemetery section that people have been buried in by the cemetery board that is non-existent, which is Robin Bond and Bill Davis. Their terms expired in 2003, I believe, and no one's ever been replaced. And then it became clear that at least 2 of the 3 commissioners are all in favor of Bluff taking over the section that's considered the Bluff Cemetery. However, the discussion became broader because Hole in the Rock has a section there and the county has a section. I don't disagree with the conclusion that we need a public hearing to get input on what the community wants. I am not sure that it's particularly needs to focus on what Hole in the Rock Foundation wants, because they have their own cemetery district, and I'm seriously have never heard anybody in the town of Bluff say they want to merge with Hole in the Rock Foundation Cemetery. But what the agreement was that was reached was we will schedule a public hearing to get input on the cemetery, try to figure out exactly how you transfer a special service district, which would be probably by resolution, and then move forward with the state. In the course of the meeting earlier in the week, I heard about a cemetery grant through the State Office of Historic Properties, SHPO. When I reached out to Amy Berry yesterday and today, the part of the information was that these grants were available. It was a short window of time, and you could use it for pretty much anything to do with the cemetery. That was incorrect information. It's an annual grant that runs from February 1st to May, the end of May every year. And they have money in that department, but you can't use it for beautification or you can't use it for beautification or maintenance, which is kind of the problem of what we have. You can use it for GIS, for instance, GIS services, which is something we do need because we need to delineate all the plots. But I was hopeful that we would be able to use it to just kind of tidy up where we're at. The grant cannot be used for maintenance or beautification projects, but you can use it for digitization, preservation, and some types of restoration. So I'm going to continue to pursue the grant and then work with Erin to identify with MAC a public hearing date.
Did you say some of your goals were like fencing and things like that?
Well, that's what the state goals are.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would go into protection and stuff, not beautification, so.
Yeah.
maybe there's-
And apparently, I've talked to Amy quite a few times, and I'll call her back later this week. I think it isn't even a grant application like we're used to doing. It's just kind of give them a narrative of what you want to do. So I thought, take some photos up there. We've got the survey, we could do GIS or do whatever, but at least get started. And in the meantime, the real goal is to if the community wants the cemetery, get it transferred away from the county to the town, set up a board and work with the auditor to clean this up and apply for a grant to do whatever we can use a grant for. And I think where the sticking point could be, we were told in this other meeting by CERTA that it was a 10% match and cities, towns, and counties were eligible. On the website, it says only counties. It doesn't refer to towns. So now I have to call Amy back and see if towns can apply. If the county has to apply, that's not going to happen. I mean, that's just the reality right now where they're sitting. I would certainly ask Mac, but the county is trying to eliminate applying for grants because they haven't been productive with their grants. But so anyway, next step is to identify a public hearing date and get it out there and then move from that point. And so anybody who's listening, if you're interested in working on the cemetery, I could use a little bit of help, but I'll take this one on and not try to shift it to anybody else. Any questions?
So ownership up there, is that part of what you'll show on? Right, like I don't understand the difference between what the town is claiming and what the Bull Rock folks are claiming. Or is it just interesting? Is that I thought that
So Southwest Heritage owns part of it, and the transfer that they made to the cemetery district is probably faulty and never, and it transferred to an entity that I don't believe ever existed. But the interests are Southwest Heritage, Hole in the Rock Foundation, the county. And then the county narrative is the town is burying people wherever they want up there, which is not quite accurate. But Commissioner Mon saw the wiseness in getting a survey done so we know where the boundary lines are. And I believe the cemetery district and the BSA boundaries kind of lay on top of each other, but that's what we're trying to sort out. But the first thing is before we jump in full steam ahead is getting the input from the community, whether you want to take on the cemetery or just turn everything back to the county and say, this is yours to fix.
so and then this interim where nobody seems to know who's in charge, there have been mistakes in burial and stuff, so it's, it would be great to get it sorted out who's in charge.
Well, in addition to that, there's transparency issues, deposit and investment issues, banking issues, no meetings, no minutes, no anything. And so somebody has to have oversight. People are being buried there. So it was something I started 6.5 years ago, and it took this long for the county to acknowledge that they probably have no interest in any way up there in terms of where the burials are happening. So I'll bring it back once I identify a public hearing that we get going on that.
So when people ask about it or need to be buried up there, then the route is to come to you now to ask I mean,
No,
where,
the town is not gonna accept any responsibility for it until we hear from the public. And we know what the transfer ability is of the special service district. And for right now, this is all on San Juan County. They have the special service district under them, and they would go to Robin Bond to buy a plot
okay,
and Bill Davis to manage it.
so keep it just what it's been.
Oh, absolutely. We're not touching this liability until we have it solid on the ground that we're doing this. And that's what I stressed in the meeting is you can take it San Juan County and clean it up and we'll back off, or we'll take it, but not until I've got everything in place to do it. Then number 6 is Dark Skies update by Sarah Brack. I'm assuming she's on, but that could be the wrong assumption.
Yes.
I'm here. Hi there.
Hi. So the Dark Sky application was resubmitted today to Michael Rayner, our representative for the Dark Sky Association. I submitted the most finalized draft, which I got today, and I sent it over to him today. And they're in our checklist that basically goes through our application and says we have all of these things. So big thanks to Diana Davison for helping with that checklist and Malia Collins for helping with that checklist. We did have to add a portion of our sign ordinance to the Dark Sky application in order to show that our sign measurements wouldn't exceed what they have. We don't specify sign size in our lighting ordinance, so we had to attach that. That change has been made. That's been submitted today. That should still give us enough time for the board to hear it this month. So hopefully by the end of this month, we will know if we will be a Dark Sky community or not.
The end of April.
Hopefully. I mean, we've turned it in that they should, if they have a board meeting this month, and I think they do, then we should be early enough that they should be able to review it at the end of this month.
Wow,
Yeah, that's great. Very
that
nice.
is amazing. Thank you, Diana and Malia. Boy,
Yeah.
anybody have any questions or whatever? Okay, well, thank you, Sarah. I assume you'll keep us posted.
Yeah, I'll let you know anything I find out, but it'll be at the very earliest, it'll be the end of this month.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. All right, then we can move to the next, which is a request by the building manager for installation of an art rail in the Bluff Community Center. Malia.
Hello. So I didn't include anything in your packet today because what this first is I'm putting some feelers out before I do a bunch of research to figure out what your guys' thoughts are. So we were approached by a local artist that they'd like to present some of their artwork in our town office space. So Kate Aitchison very kindly came by and helped me measure and kind of think out what it would look like for us to put an art rail in the office space. First, she was thinking the hallways, and then as we walked around, we also talked about putting it in some of the offices. And so basically my question for you guys is this something you would like to pursue, is putting an art rail that does follow our strategic plan, I believe, at showing our local artists and allowing people to, you know, making our town office kind of a museum space in a sense. And I got a couple of just really quick quotes. And so what the quotes basically are options of putting a light on the art rail, which will definitely increase the price of the art rail. And then we would also have to pay for an actual light to attach to it. But in the hallway, we have the 3 ceiling mounted lights. And so where those lights are, the artwork would be illuminated properly, but there is the question of the spaces between how well those pieces would be illuminated. So for pull up my quotes here really quick, just for a little bit of an idea for each, so that measurements, 78-inch rail. How many feet is that?
That's 6 feet.
6.5.
So for every 6.5 feet, it's looking at like $90 for a rail and then $70 for a light fixture. And so we would be looking at about $200 per 6 feet. Or, and that's for the rail, including the light. Or we could go cheaper and not do any light, and it'd be $36 per 6 feet. And that would just be using the lighting that we have in the hallways. And then if you also want to expand it into the offices, we'd also be looking at rails in the offices to also expand that rotating art gallery. Or
If we did the light, how do we wire it?
so that's why the rail is more expensive, is because it plugs into the rail, the light itself does.
And is there power in the hallway there to plug the rail into, because it's got to plug into something?
Correct. So there is a power supply, and that supplies up to 8 rails and 17 lights. So we would only need to plug in like one power supply for the entire hallway, and then potentially another one for each office if we chose to do lights and rails in each office.
So they're hooked together somehow?
Yeah, so then the rails would hook together every 6 feet, they would hook together. So we were thinking we could do the town hallway, the office hallway, and then even the food pantry bathrooms, we could put another section there, and then offices 1, 2, and 3. So if you guys have a room you'd like me to continue researching, I can come back with quotes for each office as well as each of those individual spaces. But I kind of want to know what your guys' thoughts are, because since we just looked over the budget.
Are they movable?
Good question. The hooks themselves would be movable. We'd install the rails, but then you can move the hooks
Or the
wherever you
rails?
want along.
Kind of like these are, the ones in here.
I don't think the rail itself would be movable once we installed it, but it might be. It might just be a screw.
It's just curious.
Yeah, good question.
If we're moving facilities in the near future.
Right.
I mean, maybe it's just me, but this has worked well for people to hang things on with the hooks without having any elaborate lighting. And I think
it's different when it's just art, like.
Yeah, my preference is $36 to over 200. I don't even think it's that much of a question.
Well, that's kind of where I'm headed. It's like, well, it would be really nice to have like more, whatever. I'd say we start with the rail and see what we need down the road. But, you know, that could be something where there are grants through the museum, that cultural site I'm in for the cemeteries, you know, down the road. But I get the rail and.
And I like the idea of it, like in the CCC, maybe having lighting when we do the rails up there and stuff. It's kind of a darker seeming building, but the hall is pretty lit. Like, I don't know, like maybe I don't understand art very well, but it seems like you can see art in there. But
The hallway is really bright. I'm not I think a problem with those restrooms is they're open to the public. They're not protected. We can't protect people's artwork.
So there are certain types of hooks that do lock. So there is an option to get, it's called a Zipper Pro hook. And the hook itself prevents people, I guess that's not true. I guess it prevents people from being able to just lift it and carry it off. But if somebody had some time and it was open to the public, there is a higher potential. But this door does lock. So during events, I typically do lock that door.
And I don't think we would be able to guarantee that their art would still be there if they brought it over and put it up in the hallway.
is the idea that they would have the art for sale or like contact for sale or?
That would be up to the artist. Some artists may want to have it for sale, some artists may not. One of Kate's suggestions was to have an art gallery opening that would actually coincide with town events at Arts Fest or Balloon Fest or Dark Sky Festival. At that point, he's changing over the artwork and allow the artist to have an artist talk or present their opening. And then to follow the grants discussion, there's also a recommendation that we provide a stipend to artists to hang their artwork and look for grants that would do that to allow to pay artists for their work, because artists are people that don't necessarily get recognized for the amount of work that does go
But would that area back there be conducive to like what she's saying with the events, or would that be right out here practically?
It could be a decision made by for the artist, and, you know, if it's nice outside, it could even be on the west side of the building, and they can talk about it and allow people to walk through or something, but I'm not totally sure what the vision for that would be. But even as people come to spend time with Erin and I and everyone that spends time at the office, it's a nice way to decorate our walls.
So I look at it less of like, yeah, like showing art as much as like, yeah, making the space nicer to be in general. Like when you go to the Monticello, like the Hideaway or whatever, and they've got all those pictures and stuff, it just does make it a little bit nicer to be in and kind of raises up that we're an art community.
Yeah, and this was an idea that we had way back when we got the ARPA funds to do the remodel, was to be able to put in a picture rail and put art there and feature the artists. And in terms of anybody stealing or damaging, I think that writing a contract that indemnifies us if an artist is bringing their stuff in, and obviously there are ways to do that. I'm wondering, Malia, by chance, did you talk with, or did you think to talk with Lenise Peterman about what Helper does? Because they really did a lot of tie into art. And I'm guessing that they would have, she would have, or her staff would have really good ideas. Like they may have a contract that we could coach, some things like that. But I'd be in favor of starting with the lesser expensive piece of the rail.
Okay. I will come back in early May with some more quotes and a little bit more information. And I love that suggestion about Lenise. I'll contact her and ask how they did that.
I mean, they tied so much of their remodels to art and making an artist community that, yeah. Okay, so I'll just remind me to put that on, but I'll put it on my notes for the agenda on the 6th. Then a report on the yard cleanup fire suppression project. Malia.
Hey, still me. So I want to big shout out to everyone in town that came and brought their yard waste, and to the fire department who bravely lit fires and burned fires and safely put them back out, and Bears Partnership for providing the tools, and all of our volunteers. And I think the Davila actually may have won the award for bringing the most loads.
We brought more than Britt.
Between you guys and the Hearts, so we want to mention.
We're having dual drive-ins there.
It was awesome. So we ended up, by the end of the weekend, I don't have my final number, but we were close to 50 truckloads and trailer loads of brush and branches and wood out of the wood bank. And I met with Hamadou, who has the chipping company. I met with him last night, and he's going to provide me with a quote as soon as he has one for what it would look like for chipping all of the branches. And so the branches included are those that we added to the pile in the southeast corner of the CCC.
Northeast.
Northeast corner of the CCC. I tried so hard. And then on the other side of the fence, there's maybe 4 or 5 bushes or piles of the trees of heaven, right? Is it heaven? And so they will chip all of those. And with that quote, one of my questions for you guys, we don't have to answer it now because we don't have that quote in front of us, but something to ponder. He's going to give us a couple of different options in that quote, a buyback option, because he also has a compost company. And if we don't want to keep the shredded material, the chipped material here in town, he could include in that quote a buyback where he would buy that chipped material and take it back and have it for himself to sell or use for his compost business, whatever he chooses to do with it. He also may end up needing to use some of his equipment to move the branches over to the other side of the fence, and so will provide us with that quote. Or one of my thoughts is potentially passing the cost on to people that choose to pick up chips of the cost of chipping, depending on what it ends up costing. He previously quoted me about $60 per square yard. which is cheaper than you can get mulch and blanding, so it should still be a discount, but with the amount that we're going to have, I'm not totally sure what our total is going to be. So is that a service the town has to provide, or is it a piece of paying for this service? People to pay for the chip insurance.
I think having people pay to get the chips gets us into the murky hole of, is this a fee? You know, how do we classify it? Do we have to amend something? I would be all in favor of something that absolves us of having to ask people for any payment for the materials. Let's do it as a service, if anything, but see what all those options look like. But I think we just walked down a murky path with saying, you can come get a wheelbarrow full and it will cost you A.
Yeah.
I just,
What if he sells it back? Like,
Well-
what if we give it to him and get a cheaper price and then he sets it up to where people can buy it from him?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's just get what the options look like, but and again, it's that trade-off, like who's gonna be responsible for getting the product to the people coming? Is it one day, you know, out of the year, or is it? I just see it as a pain in
But
the
if
neck.
if he handled that, we just said, we want all this gone and
Yeah.
chipped and then.
Right, yeah. But I think in terms of us doing it, yeah, unless somebody wants to volunteer to be in charge of working with Malia to, but yeah, let's get the options and find out.
To be continued. Also on that yard cleanup fire suppression project, people were thrilled, and I'd like to make this an annual thing and potentially an every 6-month thing, depending on what people's thoughts are. But I feel like a lot of what this event was making up for lost time. So I don't know if we'd have such a big turnout every year because people have been working on these piles for years. So something else to think about also for the public to let me know what your thoughts are every 6 months, once a year, kind of put the word on that. Opinions.
Thank you. Sounds like it was successful.
I want to give a big shout out to Malia for dedicating her whole weekend. Erin was there all day, most of the day Saturday.
Say, we've got the battle wounds
Yeah,
to like,
yeah.
I saw your arms too, like
It was
scratched.
really a great community coming together effort to, and I hope we got some good fire suppression stuff taken care of.
Yeah.
Still a lot out there.
All right, thanks, Malia. Then number 9 is a summary of the San Juan County Council of Governments meeting on April 9th. That was the one I went to up in Blanding, and we do it it started off with being a meeting of mayors, and then CERTA jumped in with some funding, so they have Christine Watkins from CERTA, who kind of helps set the agenda with Bailey Egley from Monticello mayor. The thing of importance I've already talked about was the grant that may be available through SHPO on cemeteries. And then it was the changes on the TRT that was discussed. And otherwise, most of it is just not of much interest in terms of Bluff. A lot of it was the inland port stuff, and we haven't made any decisions on the inland port. It was just getting updates. But whoever becomes mayor, this could be a very useful group to have the mayor going to. Then number 10 is a review of the Wildland Urban Interface Bill, which is House Bill 48. It impacts counties, landowners, insurance providers, and the Utah Insurance Department. And I put this on here just as a heads up that this is something that has to be included in our general plan, which is why I really would like to have the Hanson Group review the general plan, because this is another one of those things like the airport overlay that have to go into our general plan. And I think if they're used to doing those things, then to give the draft, the changes to the planning and zoning and be able to, work on it. And I thought I guess I didn't bring that piece with me. But it's mostly just a heads up that we have to include this additional wildland interface bill. And if there will be some money, that's I believe, an unfunded mandate that ties to it.
And for towns, municipalities left off just accidentally, or is it aimed at just counties?
No, I haven't had a chance to talk with Chris about it, but I think it's a trickle down. And so everybody's general plan has to have it. And yeah, I thought I brought it with me, but it's a requirement that we amend the general plan to put it in there. So rather than my spending time reading it, I thought have Chris read it, and then if we use the Hanson group to review, they'll know where it goes and what the impact is.
It looks like there's fees connected with it, so it would be interesting. Like the county taking fees to put into some wildland fund. Just seems weird.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. At the county's discretion on what's high risk and not, just seems kind of wild, but.
It could be that the fire department, like maybe having Anthony to come explain what it is, so he would help too, or he might be a good one to help put it into our plan.
There was actually a training on it, which I missed because I had a problem for the town that I was dealing with, and I didn't sit in on it, but it is taped. I could send everybody the link. Somebody might want to sit through 2 hours of listening to it, because they went through, it was pretty detailed. Anthony Blau was on. I don't know who else was out from the fire department.
So it's probably, it looks, just pulled up the bill, it looks like it is county related, and a lot of those wildland fire risks are county risks. They typically aren't like, inside of town, although like Boulder, Louisville, they got definitely wildfire right in their city, but usually it's a county thing, that it looks like it's just directed to them on this bill.
Well, if it were just directed to them, most likely people that were local wouldn't have been included in it, like me or Anthony included in the request for listening to this, because we have a wildland fire policy that we pay for with the volunteer hours, and it ties it to this. So anyone is welcome to let me know that they want the link, and I can send it. There was a slide and then an outer meeting notes, and I couldn't open it. But it has to go in our general plan, so somehow it affects us, and I don't have the time to spend at that point. I couldn't jump on. So that kind of ties to number 11, which is again the discussion for an airport overlay and a review of the general plan. So Malia did planning and zoning talk specifically then about Hanson. So I think what I'll do is pull out my email with, is his first name Jacob Hanson?
Yes, he's one of the contacts.
And tell him to go ahead and talk with planning and zoning directly, since that's where it all has to start anyway, rather than us tying up our time. Unless somebody wants to spend time on the general plan, on the council, or the overlay, I would say we just toss it right to P&Z and let them do it.
Sounds great. We do have a meeting this week.
Perfect. Then just feel free to let them know that I'll just send an email, copy it to Amanda, and then you guys go from there. Number 12, a summary of the spring training webinar on April 9th by Utah League of Cities and Towns. I started to try to put together kind of a summary, and it made no sense for me to do that. On the Utah League of Cities and Towns for this date, this ties together all the legislation that impacts towns and cities. So I would encourage everyone to listen to it. Well, and get a sense. Again, there were hundreds of bills at issue. This impacted cities and towns. And most of them are pretty benign. There were some that won't impact us because we're a town, but it's worth listening to and having an idea of what the legislature did. I don't know what this particular comment was, but in the meeting I was at with the other mayors in CERTA, there were several comments that Utah League of Cities and Towns was punished by taking away funding because of their support of one particular bill. And I don't know what that was, and I didn't have a chance to talk to anyone. But apparently Utah League of Cities and Towns got hit with a huge legislative cut. And they said it was directly the result of the membership voting to take a particular stance. And no one said what the bill was, so then I'll try to get more detail on that. Would be interesting.
Modern governance.
Yeah. So number,
Clarification, was that the county or was that the Utah League of Cities and Towns that they're saying is being punished?
the league, yep. So number 13, discussion and a vote to pay bills.
Pretty, so you all should have received the accounts payable, accounts receivable report. Of note, we did receive an invoice from Uncommon Architects totaling almost $15,000. That's the second invoice for architectural services for the CCC. As a reminder, this is funded out of GOEO. So in addition to approving that, I'm also recommending that you approve a transfer from PTIF, which is where that GOEO funding is currently housed, to general checking. Other routine utilities include and expenses are, payroll, power, stuff like that. I did get payroll taxes for last month and the quarter paid. So these are the new accruing ones for the month of April. And then just a couple things on the credit card. And in addition to the San Juan County Senior Center that I still need to calculate, I will also add in the San Juan County Transportation Board matching request. Again, that's going to be about $12,900. Any questions or concerns? I did try to break out those legal fees so you all could see it, but as a reminder, I do break those out in our GL accounts as well.
Do you mind just sharing your screen with it?
Sure.
It's not showing me at all.
So, no, sorry to be clear, you needed a vote to move the 14,851 from PTIF to general.
Yeah, I think we'll do both. So a vote to pay the bills and then a vote to initiate the transfers.
Two separate.
Yeah, I think that's how we did it last time.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter which order. Doesn't matter. Okay. Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous.
Motion to transfer $14,851 from PTIF to general fund.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous.
See, we've got quite a sizable power bill there. That reaches us more to do the solar.
Yeah, for this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll note though that the power bill for the CCC has dropped to, what was it, $56?
Yeah, there's some.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's way down. Shocking when you actually turn off the utilities. Yes.
And then
Yes,
yes,
I'm-
on maintenance and just keeping the meter going and whatnot. But yeah, that's good to see.
Thank you.
All right, then number 14, discussion and update on summer internship positions.
So the application closes tonight at 9 p.m. So far we have 3 applicants, and as I indicated, I do think that we have quite a few projects. What I'd like to do though, to, ensure that we have a sense of what the applicant, receive their resumes, receive their applications. There were, some short answers on there. that we asked, that they fill out. And so I would like to conduct just phone interviews. And so my hope would be that potentially Malia, as well as a member of the council, could sit in on 3 interviews. If we get anyone else, then they would be interviewed as well. And just from a very high level of, talking to the person, understanding, their strengths and interests in the position. And then my hope would be that after those interviews, then the council could determine whether, we stick with the 2 who we originally, 2 positions we originally hoped for. Do we look at the 3rd? And then we could have, interns in by early to mid-May at the latest. So.
I'm available to help with interviews.
That'd be great.
Just let me know when. Try to work it out my schedule.
Excellent. I've got a few I had them fill out their availability for interviews too. So I'll coordinate with you and Malia, and then we'll just do three phone interviews. And I do try to keep them kind of close together, so I don't have to pull you 3 separate days. So thanks, Britt.
Well, it's good to do interviews for interns anyways, just because it helps them.
Exactly. Yeah. So very excited that we got 3 applicants, and if anyone is listening, still have a couple hours, but it does close today at 9. So.
And then you're gonna try to do the interviews this week?
I think it's looking, it probably is gonna be next week. I did not reach out to them we'll try to do next week, probably like a Thursday, Friday situation, but I'll let you know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then, update from the April 3rd, 2025 planning and zoning meeting, Luanne.
Yeah, so we've talked about quite a few of the topics already, but one of the things that they were concerned about, and I'll just do it briefly again, the land use clearances, removing that from planning and zoning was their idea that should be separated into the building department. And so we had some discussion earlier in our work session about that. And they will continue to keep doing the land use clearances, and there's a fee to do a land use clearance now of $200. So that will stay put until something is changed. They have been working on the RV ordinance. One of the things came up with how dense you can have a mobile home park within residential areas, and the idea is that they are setting the density in there, and it would be 6 per acre or 6 per house. Yeah, but anyway, it was more dense than regular housing. And then the solar energy ordinance, they talked about making that into renewable energy instead of just solar, so that people that do have windmills up or whatever, that there's other forms and define what renewable energy is. The airport overlay, they did discuss that on the Hanson group. They would like that. And then the general plan, I thought that would be their expertise, but Hanson has offered to do a free overlook of the whole general plan and kind of let us know what might need updated or changed and whatnot. On their next agenda, they're going to discuss the idling ordinance and the enforcement spreadsheet of all the ordinances. And they do have a meeting Wednesday at 6.
Thursday.
I'm sorry. It used to be Wednesday. It's just Thursday, which is what's today? The 15th, so it'll be 17th. Yeah, April 17th at 6. And it's virtual. The link is on the website. Questions? All right, any additions?
I believe we wanted a little bit more clarification about the enforcement spreadsheet and where Mayor Leppanen wants us to go next with that, kind of where she's at, where she wants us to take it, just so that we're not
Right.
overlapping work.
Mm-hmm. Because you had said you wanted to do it, but they were wondering like where they could help them.
You can help by taking it all on. Thank you. Yep, that would be very helpful. All right, then, Luanne, update of the River Trail celebration, which is on April 25th.
Yes, so that's coming up next week. And this project is all within the town of Bluff limits. It starts in Bluff, stays in Bluff, the whole entire thing. It's an asset of the town that's been being worked on for quite a few years. But it started with private property owners, but then it added the Bluff City Historic Preservation Association, and their, River Trail crew, the BLM, Grand Canyon Trust, and the Bears Ears Partnership came in kind of towards the end and did the whole ADA trail part in conjunction with BLM. Jones and DeMille were the engineers. Sondrager did the building of it. So it was this big group, big cooperative effort. And it's, I think it's 10 miles of trail. So the celebration will be kind of a grand opening at Sand Island, with a ribbon coming through with Elliott. It's going to be the push through the yellow ribbon. And that'll be at 1:30 on Friday the 25th. So everybody's welcome. And then the town of Bluff permitted the sign over in West Park. So that was a portion of that in it. Anyway, so it's just a big group effort to make this all finally come together in the celebration for 25th.
Yeah, I think it should be really exciting. I think the one point of clarification, though, just so that somebody who's not familiar with the river trail, this is a private endeavor. It's not a part of the town, even though the trail runs within the town. And I just am saying that for liability purposes.
Well, yeah, and at some point, you know, it could be a Parks and Rec thing in the future sometime or something, but it's completely, it's all with easements on private, BLM, and yeah, on private property and on BLM property. But not regulated by the town and not maintained by the town, no expenses have been incurred to the town.
Well, it should be a great afternoon, so hopefully it won't be too hot.
Right, and the Bears Ears Partnership, they have offered to do like refreshments. At
Wine
the
and cheese.
at the beach after, and yeah, and there'll be guided hikes. So a couple of the local archaeologists are going to come and walk that part that and showcase the petroglyphs and whatnot. So, and then you can walk back to town. There'll be some activities, but there's some posters around.
Yeah, there's some posters. There's also a star party then
Right.
At the peak.
Mm-hmm. So that's it. And part of that
International Dark Sky.
doing that combined was so that it could offset other activities that are in town. So if people want to come into town and do it, then stay for the art, dark sky stuff.
Maybe by then our application will have been reviewed.
Okay.
Be kind of exciting.
Great. So this is what the little flyer looks like if you see it around.
Got my fridge to remind me I'm supposed to go.
Yes, that's right.
Remind myself.
Yes.
All right, then, I apologize to Sarah Barak, because I didn't realize that she was not here again. I could have just moved it up. But it's a waiver request for the use of the community center for pre-K graduation. So Sarah, are you on?
I am.
I should.
That's okay. I'm also the Bears Ears Partnership representative today, so it worked out well. So yes, we would like to, the parents of the preschool would like to host a graduation on May 16th. We've already requested, reserved the community center. But since it is only a group of 9 students and we're a small group of parents, we are requesting the waiver of the fee for the rental. But we would pay the cleaning fee.
Hey.
Any thoughts, anybody?
Sounds good.
I think it's a great idea. Is the public invited?
Yes, it's actually, I mean, it is open. We'll send out invitations for families. We're kind of expecting it to be, 50 to 75 parents, grandparents, neighbors. So yes, and I'll let you guys know the time right now. I think we're going to do May 16th at 2 is our goal.
So, any motions?
I motion that we allow the Bluff preschool to use the community center on May 16th at 2:00 for the preschool graduation celebration.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm gonna abstain since I'm one of the parents.
Okay, so one abstention, 4 ayes. Thank you, Sarah. Just keep us posted.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Emily, you already have it on the calendar, right? Okay, yeah. You're welcome. All right, then, any other? It's 5:28.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. 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 Anyone opposed? All right, I'm turning off the recorder and,